Hello class. We're going to be going over the review questions on the topics that I mentioned earlier, week number 3. Here we have our first question is this. The average question, Paul's average for the last 5 exams was 78. Now, whenever you use the word average, what we need to think about is the sum. So here we have average of 5 exams was 78. Now, what does that mean? Then sum can be always calculated by multiplying the average by the number of beta. So, therefore, we're going to have 78 times 5. Now, here we're going to have 390 as our sum. Then, the question is this. If he wants to raise his average to 80 on the next 2 exams, so that means now our new average, we want that to be 80, but it's not out of 5, but now it's going to be 7, because we're going to have 2 more exams. Then what is our sum? Then sum becomes 80 times 7, which is equal to 560. Excuse me. Now here, then since the difference between these two becomes 170, 560 minus 390 becomes 170, but that is the sum that we get to see for 2 exams. That means the average grade for those last 2 exams becomes 170 divided by 2, because there are 2 exams. Difference of these two becomes 85. So therefore 85 becomes our answer. Alright, let's move on to the next question. Still the average question. Class of 30 students. Out of 30, 18 are boys and 12 are girls. Now, the average for the class, so that means average of 30 students. This one is equal to 78. And just like before, what we like to do is we're going to refer to the sum of 30 students. That must be 234, 0. Excuse me. Now, so here we have the sum. But the thing is, average for the girls is 81. But how many girls do we have? We have 12 girls. So average for 12 girls is equal to 81. Now, that means this should give us the sum for those 12 girls. Sum for those 12 girls must be 972. That means our sum for 18 boys must be 2,340 minus 972. Then we get 1,368. Now, basically with that, what we like to do is we like to get the average of those 18 students. That means what we like to do is with this number, we like to divide by 18. Then we'll end up getting 76. Here comes our final answer. Alright, let's continue. Number 3. Now, this is the average speed question. So if I were to make up one example here, going one way was 45 miles per hour, but coming back was 15 miles per hour. So as we mentioned in the class, we could have done many different ways, but one thing that we like to do is, what if we have to set up a distance? There were 15 miles per hour and then 45 miles per hour nicely. That means we are looking at common multiple. Common multiple between 45 and 15. That seems to be 45 miles. So let us assume that distance in fact is equal to 45 miles. Then average speed once again is equal to total distance over total time. In other words, total distance within 45 becomes 90. Total time, since 45 miles with the 45 miles per hour, travel 45 miles, we're simply talking about 1 hour. Plus coming back, 15 miles per hour to travel 45 miles, we can easily state it's got to be 3. And what we end up getting is 90 divided by 4. We end up getting the speed to be 22.5 miles per hour. That becomes our final answer. Once again, the important key here was to come up with a number that fits 45 and 15 together nicely. In this case, it was 45, which is in fact common multiple, or least common multiple for that matter. All right, let us move on. In this case, sum of 5 consecutive odd integer is 1005. Now, sum is 1005. Then, as we mentioned, you know what? We don't always have to have the x as the smallest. Since we have odd number of the consecutive, so we can say x, let x be the middle number. Since odd integers, then if you remember correctly, even and odd, they all increase by 2 or decrease by 2. So our next numbers will be x plus 2 and x minus 2. Our next numbers will be x plus 4 and x minus 4. There it goes. We have 5 numbers. The sum then becomes, when you add up everything, as you will realize, the plus 4 and minus 4 will cancel out, and minus 2 and plus 2 will cancel out. Hence, what we end up getting is sum becomes 5x. Ends up being 1005. Then, of course, x becomes 201. And what is the largest integer out of 5 integers? So middle one is 201. That means this one is 203, and this becomes 205. So our final answer becomes 205. There it goes. Next. Average of 6 even integers is 21. In fact, what I meant to say was 6 consecutive even integers. Now, if you remember, in consecutive numbers, mean, which is the average in this case, arithmetic mean, is in fact equal to the median. Now, knowing that, how do you find the median of the 6 numbers? So if you have 6 slots, you will realize that we will have 2 middle numbers right here. In fact, our median becomes the average of those 2 numbers. In other words, the 21 is a number that goes between those 2 even numbers. That's why we saw odd number as our average. That means upper number becomes 22 and low number becomes 20, so that we can have the average of 21. Then all of a sudden, we set up the 2 middle numbers out of 6 even integers, consecutive even integers. And what is the smallest one? This becomes 18, and this becomes then 16. So 16 becomes our final answer. All right, let us move on. Number 6. Here, I want you to realize the sum consecutive and starting from the negative number. Those three things actually is very, very important, because when you look into that, starting from negative 23, regardless what the sum is, if I add up all the way to 23, see, starting from negative 23 to positive 23, I know that the sum's gotta be 0. 0 is our sum so far at that point. That makes sense due to the symmetry between negative 23 to positive 23. Now, but our sum is not 0, but it's 75, then obviously we have to go further. 24. Okay, with one number, our sum becomes only 24. Now, 25. When you add up these two, it becomes 49. Okay, let's go for one more number, 26. Oh, whoops, wait a minute. The sum of those numbers becomes 75. And the sum here was 0, so therefore, we would have added up to number 26 to get the sum of 75. Now, then question is, how many consecutive integers will add it up? That means we just have to, this is called inclusive counting, because we are including the two endpoints. So therefore, what we have to do is 26 minus negative 23. This is what many people would have done, but we have to add 1 because we are counting inclusively. Then here we end up having 50. There are 50 numbers that added up to get this result. All right, let us continue. Number 7, interior angles and the triangles are consecutive even integers. That means from a triangle, let's call this one as x, and this can be x plus 2, and this can be x plus 4. In this case, I made up the smallest one as my x, but it doesn't really matter. Now, since consecutive even integers, that's how we can set it up. Now, what we're going to do is, because some of these three angles is 180, so we're going to have x plus 2 plus x plus 4 must be equal to 180. Now, then we realize that 3x plus 6 is equal to 180. Then, of course, we realize 3x here becomes 174, where x becomes 58. That means this one is 58, this one is 60, therefore that makes this one to be 62. Therefore 62 becomes the largest angle. Alright, so here let us look at number 8. The original price of a coat is $200, and then it was on sale for this much. So let's look at the discount. We don't know what the discount is, so let's call that as X. Now, originally it was $200, but the result was 158. What does that mean? It means X must be equal to 158 divided by 200. Now, once you calculate this one, this must be 0.79. In other words, 79%. If you think about it, since 79% is what you end up paying, the discount has to be 21%. 100 minus 79. So that must be our discount. All right, let us move on to the next question. Number 9. Now, went down by 15%. The price went down and rose by 20%. So what does that mean? Here we have price went down by 15%. That's basically, we can express that as a 0.85, 85%. But next, rose by 20%, that means we can multiply that by 1.2. Now, then this would tell us the total change of the price. So 0.85 times 1.2 must be equal to 1.02. That means total percent change would have been 2% increased because it's greater than 1. we realize 2% increase. All right, let us move on. Number 10. If it's lost by 70%, that means we can say whatever the price was, we can write it as 0.7p because lost 30%, we still have 70% left. By how many percent should the stock gain to recover the loss? That means by how many percent we have no idea, so I'm going to call it as a p, x. But the recovered price is same as the original, so it's going to be just simply p itself. So divide by 0.7p, then x becomes 1.42, about 9. That means we need to gain this much more. So we need to gain 42.9%. We need to recover about this much in order for it to make up 30% on the following day. All right, let us move on to number 11. Now here 25%, so we can write it as well. 0.25 of, meaning 60, is equal to what percent? X times 50. So that's one way which you can do it. Or simply when you divide by 50 on each side, you'll realize that x must be equal to x is equal to 0.3. In other words, 30%. All right. All right, so let's look at number 12. So we have 20,100. Now this has been broken down into this way. This basically means we need to do the prime factorization. So let us look into this one together. So if you have to break this one down, I can see that we will do 201 and 100 quite easily. And then 100 becomes 10 and 10. 10 becomes 2 and 5. Here it becomes 2 and 5. Now, 201, here it becomes 3, and it becomes 67. Now, when you look into that, you will realize that 67 is a prime number. There's no number that divides that. So therefore, when you look into this one, we will see we have 2 2s, and 1 3, and 1 5, and 2 5s. So we end up getting that is equal to 2 squared times 3 to the first times 5 squared times 67. That means A, B, and C here becomes 2, 1, 2. So 2 plus 1 plus 2, which ends up being 5. So therefore 5 becomes our answer. All right, how about here? Here we have an exponential equation, 4 and 8. You will see that 2 is the common base, where 4 and 8 can be together. In other words, 2 squared, the 2x plus 3 can be rewritten as to this one. And here we have 2 to the third power to the x minus 1. That means when you multiply the exponents, here we get 4x plus 6, where base is 2. That must be equal to 2 to the 3x minus 3. Now here that means since the bases are equal, we get to realize that the exponents must be equal to each other. So we calculate 4x plus 6 must be equal to 3x minus 3. As we subtract 6, subtract 3x, you will realize that x is left as negative 9. So negative 9 becomes our final answer. All right, number 14. Here, 25 factorial divided by 5 to the n power. That means how many 5 can divide? One way which we can do this is count the factors of 5. So when you're looking to 25 factorial, we have 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, 7, 8, 9. And you see, only numbers that contains 5 as a factor is the multiples of 5. That means we are looking at these numbers only. So we have 5 numbers. But when you look into 26, it has 2 5s. Because 5 times 5 is equal to 25. So we have 2 5s, and then 3, 4, 5, 6. Total 6 5s. That means we can divide 5 6 times. All right, number 15. We see the increase of 20% each year after 7 years, so whatever the price would have been. But increasing to 20%, that means 1.2 has to be multiplied. How many times? Because we're looking at 7 years. That's basically what we're looking at. Then this must be equal to 3.583p approximately. Then what would be the total projected increase? Now, so therefore this is 3.583 times of p. So the increase here would have been 258.3%. That's the percent that has been increased. Right, because original was 100%. All right, with this one, we're closing up this week's review. All right, have a nice day, guys.